Hi Angela, how are you?
Good. How are you doing?
No, not bad, and not bad, thanks. Would you like to introduce yourself and tell us a bit about your background?
Sure. Sure. Yeah. So most people know me probably on Twitter as Mom Ange Trades, which I got that nickname funny enough from my son who was wanting to open up a Discord at the time. He's 14 now, but it was a few years ago. And I said, I need to be able to monitor what you're doing, what your activities are. So set me up a Discord. And that to me was just funny and clever. I'm his only mom, but it was just funny. So he put it so I could monitor it, and it just kind of stuck. But yeah, for me, I started trading as a wanting to stay at home. I, have a degree in finance and background in real estate. But I wanted to be able to stay home when my first daughter was born in 2005. Um, so I then got into trading and kind of back and forth between markets. We obviously know what happened with 2008 with great financial crisis. So it's kind of just been an ebb and flow. And as my kids in probably 2021, pandemic, all my kids were kind of home. So I kind of backed off a little bit then because you needed to, do the online schooling. But then in 2021 here where I'm at, they went back to school. And so I had all my kids in school. So I was like, okay, I'm going to just take this a little more further. And I have I'd always, had some friends that I kind of helped along the way. And they'd send me these tickers and I'd help them and I'd be like, where are you getting? So this is the funny part. I didn't even really know that like Twitter, like financial Twitter, FinTwit existed. So he's like, well, I got it from FinTwit. And I'm like, what in the world are you even talking about? Just because I'd kind of always just done my own plays, done my own things. And he said, you do really good on Twitter because I helped him, with a couple of things. I'm like, oh, we'll just play this experiment on it. And it's been really fun for me to get to know and connect with traders from around the world with different, backgrounds and, different ethnicities and different styles and be able to work with them and help them and have them teach me too as well. So it's been a really fun experiment for me.
Yeah, because you've got quite a few followers now. How many? What's the latest count?
Oh, it's somewhere around 33,000. But I think I've told it's pretty decent for an account. I opened my Twitter account for my friend Chase recommendation in August of 2021.
Wow.
Um, so pretty fast. I've been met a lot of amazing people and learned so much.
Um, so does that kind of open doors in terms of sort of connecting with people and do you have like a small circle now that you're
Yeah,
comfortable
so
with?
the one thing that I will say that's opened up the most for me is finding other women traders. Where before it was kind of I could connect with, I knew a few men and, through my husband was in the business, so I could talk to some of his associates, but it was finding these women traders and being able to connect with them has been amazing just because it's women in finance is already a small niche, and then you're going to go even smaller on Twitter but it's just been amazing because I've met so many incredible women who are brilliant and smart and are there to support other women.
Yeah, that's we kind of skipped to that question actually because you kind of touched on
Oh, perfect.
it. What about women in trading? Because it's a strange thing, isn't it? Because they there's a good a number of them, but they are sometimes they're silent on either for fear of reprisal on social media or they're not readily available. So that's why I'm trying to, in a way, my small contribution is this kind of interview series to try and maybe draw the attention on because there's a lot of people looking like me online in the finance space. So it would be good to have more of women and other sectors of the trading world, especially retail, who maybe are not immediately visible because they're not the face of an investment bank or you're not maybe like Janet Yellen and everybody knows those names. But when you go
Yes.
further down, it's there are a lot of men expressing opinions, not always factually correct opinion as well, but they're louder, so they kind of take over the space. So what do you think is happening? Is it changing? How's Twitter compared to other just like before Twitter, maybe not having, as you say, maybe through your husband, but now having access to other women? How's that sort of has it made it easier to then contact other women and see how they're trading? Has that changed your um, yeah, view on women in trading generally?
Absolutely. So I think the one thing that I've noticed when I've came across a lot of women is on Twitter, the Twitter women, they are very little ego. I mean, the women, they kind of get a bad rap saying they are, kind of sensitive and, they can outburst. But every woman that I've met has been very little ego focused. You don't see too many women posting pictures of Lamborghinis and Rolex watches and Porsche and that kind of a thing. We just aren't that way. And especially when you become a mom, you are more focused on others' needs. So I think the women that I've connected with have been more about in a motherly, even if they're not moms, it's just a motherly kind of like, I want to help these people. I want to educate them. I don't need to be flashy. I don't need to show off. So that to me has just been one of the things I've noticed when I'm like putting the women as a collective is just they are not egos. And I think a lot of people that are on Twitter in the financial sector and just in general, just any people in the finance sector are kind of, there's a good chunk of them being very egotistical and show off and that's fine if that's that's something you want to do, but for me trying to help people, I want just like people who want to help and are good. But I think women have always been a little bit stereotyped, like I said earlier, about being maybe more sensitive. Or I've actually had a man tell me to my face, women don't belong here. I've not met a single woman who is intelligent in the space, and they really shouldn't be here. It was just like shocking, and it was like kind of like a backwards compliment in a way too, because he's like, because you're kind of decent, and I'm like it was just like kind of like took me back, but it was funny. But I don't think that's true, and I think a lot of women are getting attention in FinTwit for for the people that really want to learn. If they're not trying to have these big huge gains that they can post online or play the penny stocks. I think there are a lot of men, because I think there's a certain type, I think there's most men actually don't probably in the real world don't have that opinion of women. They have mothers, they have wives, they have daughters, and they would hate for any man to then stereotype them that way. But then you also have the aspect of women on, whether it's crypto or, stock markets, who then kind of use the sexual angle, which is kind of unique, to kind of, it's kind of just like with everything's sexualized. So to that, it kind of adds a discredit for certain men. And I hope and my one thing is I just like, I don't want to ever like leave men out. I want to be able to include more women into the finance sector and also be able to include the type of men who are willing to not, judge them as being, dumb or should be at home in the kitchen.
Well, that you've touched on that because there aren't many men that talk about families openly, and that's a problem
Yeah.
because it's like if you can't have a conversation about families between men, then if somebody has a conversation about families and it's a woman, then there's this sort of cultural divide. So we
Yes.
don't talk about our families because it's not right to do it openly. It's a secret. Yes, we've got pictures somewhere, but so I think if
It doesn't tie into business generally, like most businesses, like, unless you're, some family focused, but it's just, kind of like that part of your day and then that part of the day. So for me, family is super important. So I wish it was more openly discussed. And just how do you balance that relationship between being successful, in your own personal life, in your, in your career, in your family life? How do you balance it? Because it's really about a balance, because no one's going to get it 100% correct. But, if you can find that balance and be, 75%, then I think that's a win.
definitely, yeah, because you can do really well out of the home, but if something is not right at home, your relationship with your other one or with your children, if you have any, that can really get people into a bad place. Like they're not
Yeah.
settled, they can't really focus on anything. So it's hugely important to to have a balance between dedicating time and attention to family life. But America's kind of backwards on that. There's no actual paid parental leave, and it
Yeah.
seems that even when you get it, it's mostly geared towards women. So I'm
Mhm.
surprised that that's still the case. And why is that, do you think?
You know, for me, it's just the whole political aspects and kind of just the whole, I still think there's kind of this weird alpha male United States kind of guy who doesn't want to, and I think the younger, like it's funny because the older, like men, I'm almost 40, and the men that are older than me kind of have the view of men don't deserve to have paternity pay or be able to be home. But the younger guys that are younger than me, I think a lot of them are doing a demographic shift where they do think that's important, and they do think that um, they should have some of that leave, because I do think it's important, even if it's like 2 or 3 weeks. I think it's helpful to a new mom. I know when I was, had little ones, it was super helpful to have a husband that was able to be at home and help me with the kids. And I think for every mom, that's definitely the case, to be able to. So to me, it's just maybe as people age in our political system, although our leaders are all old and whatever.
We
I
talked
think
about that
maybe
on
that,
Twitter.
yeah, maybe they will be able to get that shift. But I think some progressive companies are adding those sort of things, especially some of the tech companies,
Yeah.
which is, an awesome addition, just because, I mean, it shouldn't be talked down or viewed as this is less masculine if you do this, because it's just being a good partner
Yeah.
and being a good father. It's literally not about you not being a man. It's that like you're helping someone, that you care about. And we should really never like disagree with people that we're caring about or helping.
Yeah. Yes, huge applause by the way. Yes. So yeah, it's a political choice, I guess. It's the money is there. It's just that they don't want to maybe invest in that kind of culturally. But that's interesting. So going back to how you came into trading, so it's balancing things and kind of, and then what kind of made you choose kind of more? So you're more of an options. So tell me about your trading. You sent me some notes, but I want you to obviously.
Yeah. So for me, I'm more of an option seller or option trader. I do take some buys when I see the opportunities, right? You can't just, ignore it. But I like to get my core group of companies that I actually want to own and trade off of those. I think for beginners, it's kind of hard because you have to have, 100 shares if you're going to sell covered calls, or, you could do the naked puts. I know a lot of people do that, but the problem with some of these like naked puts is you're tying up a lot of your capital and your your margin. If you're like, oh, I'm going to just sell, I know a lot of people online are like, just sell a put on what you want to own. And it's like, no, because if you don't have, unless you have just like unlimited money, it's going to tie up your things. But for me, I like to sell puts that are in the 3 to 4 week range, maybe less. And there's specific ones that I like to look for, just because you want to look for a high IV on selling. So when you're playing options, you want to be buying options when the IV is low, and you want to be selling when the IV is high. You don't want to be playing, in my opinion, you can always get the, right, but I always look at the IV as a selling when it's high and buying when it's low. So Tesla always has this crazy IV and these crazy ranges. So that's one of the ones to always look at. I mean, you could sell, right, pretty crazy premium for only being 3 months out. Where if you look at something like a Home Depot, even Amazon or Google, like you're gonna have to go out 6 months to kind of look at what that IV is. And another time that IV goes up high is right before earnings. So I know a lot of people like to buy lottery calls or puts before earnings on a company, but really you should be looking at that weekly sell if you can do that. So if you're willing to tie up that much capital for a week, and it has earnings and you feel pretty good, like it's not gonna, like, you have to also be okay owning the shares if that's the case too. If you're selling puts, I never recommend selling naked calls. That's just a disaster. So selling naked puts, or if you have the calls to do covered calls. And the good thing about selling is if it does seem to be getting away from you, you can always roll, collect premiums and roll it out. So that's what I do. And then I also, when I'm trading, what I like to look at is the daily chart. for me, just because I like to have a little bit of time to play a play. I look at the other, I obviously look at the other time frames. I like to look at the daily first, and then I'll go to the 4 for kind of like where the resistance and the support is. And then I actually go to the 15 too, just for that short term, because something could happen that day. And it's the kind of the thing with all stocks is you can have the perfect setup, but a news event can just crash it.
Yeah.
So you have to be flexible. But that's why I like the daily, because it gives me a little bit more flexibility, that it's not like so news driven. So if you're just trading these weekly zero, or weekly options or zero DTEs, a news event can absolutely just crush your option really fast. But if you have a little bit of time on them, or you're trading it off the daily, and it's maybe not news, like there's not a huge news event or a catalyst or an earnings, you usually have pretty decent, okay time on what you're going to be doing. And this year has been, since I want to say since June, we've kind of been stuck in a range between like 370 to 410 on the SPY, or, if you want to go with SPX for European options, 3,700 to 4,100. So you kind of look when those get to those areas, so I'll look at the daily, and then I'll look at what kind of the shorter time frame ones. And if I feel like I'm ready to jump into them, then I will. But, they kind of get tricky at that area too, because like a news event, so this last CPI, we were like at 3,700, and I'm like, okay. But then Powell comes out and just like drops a bomb, and it just like takes it. But then the market quickly recovered. But if you had, bought just based off that 3,700, you probably would be a little bit underwater. And that's the thing with options, is you have to, even when you get down. Yeah. So if I'm down more than 10 or 15%, I'll close that option out and try to refocus versus like hoping, because that's the thing a lot of people don't understand on options is if you lose, like say you're down 50%, to get back to that number, you have to get 100% gain to even be breaking even.
Yeah.
So it's not just as simple as getting the option price. So say you bought Tesla at an option on Tesla at 180, it dropped down to 160. You're going to have to get like that break even where you bought it. You're going to have Tesla basically in the 200 range to be breaking even, depending on your time frames.
Gosh. I'm getting an options education, by the way. So some people listening will go, yeah, I understand everything. So essentially you trade options most of the time, and then you own some company stocks. Is that right?
Yeah, so I actually own companies, and our family has, we have, for me, I like to have separate accounts for separate what your goals are. So for one account, I have options. In my IRA, I like to trade where I'm doing shorter term common trades or selling of puts, just because for the tax benefits here in the United States.
Shorts so and the long-term trades.
So you don't get the tax, bill when you trade it there, and you're not, as long as you're not pulling the money out. So this is my IRA. This is something is my retirement. I am thinking this when I trade it or cash it in, I'm going to be well over my 60s. So it's these, the ones where I want to just maybe play around, and I don't need the money, and I want to grow my IRA. So that's the thing, when you're in the United States, you have a limit on how much you can actually deposit each year into your IRA. So I fully, but you can make money on that money, and it doesn't count as part of your contribution. So that's a way to grow your IRA. And then I have an options one for just like shorter term buying, and then some commons trading in it, where I don't trade in that much because it is a tax, especially depending on your time. But if I see a option where I want to buy it, and I know it's going to go really well, and I'm okay with it, then I have to buy it in that account, because I can't buy the options in my IRA. Okay. So I have that, and then we have a specific ETF account, where we just kind of trade ETFs for like dividend grows and that kind of a thing. Or companies so it's an ETF like dividend company. So this is like a separate account where we are literally just tracking our dividends. We're collecting dividends. Although in my IRA, I do have dividend stocks too. But it's just one that if you have an ETF account, it's not going to be as, up and downs as, say some of these tech companies from 2020 to, 2000. You just have like a steady, like where I want to park money and feel safe about it. So I have that. So I have, yeah, actually 4 different accounts, but yeah.
Great. And so managing them is it time consuming, or some of it is more active and
So
some
it's
of
a
it?
little time consuming, but I love it. So I guess it's just kind of like one of those things that if you like it. But that's why I also don't try to do any plays. Another reason why I go off the daily is because I don't want to sit and babysit my position. Like if I feel like I have to go do something or if something comes up, I don't have to be completely tied to my screen all the time and watching it and monitoring it. I think a lot of people enjoy that, but I personally like to be able to feel like I have freedom to go and do something. I don't want to be tied to managing a position like, nonstop, because I think they'll drive you crazy even if you buy comments. If you sit and like babysit it, or because days can happen. I mean, yesterday we had a huge update, crazy update in the market, but today's pretty muted and a little down. So I personally think we're going to get a Santa rally and be pretty decent and not, but January will be interesting. But I just don't want to sit and manage them every single day and have stress. That's another thing. If you're playing with money that you are not okay with, like losing a little bit of it, the stock market or the bond market probably isn't the place for you to like be parking it. It would be wiser to, I mean, I know less, I don't know, over in your area, but here in the United States, we have like savings rates now just on general, high yield bonds, that are just haven't seen these areas since 2018. And it's a good way to earn, money. I know that Goldman Sachs Marcus is up to like 4%, yield. So that's pretty decent when you don't, in back in the day, you could buy like CDs, but you're tied to it. But nowadays you have savings accounts where you literally can pull it out the next day if your car breaks or something like that, but you're getting really high yield.
Okay. No, here it's sort of stuck at 0.05% for just a bank account.
That's crazy. Well, so there's like the general, like the traditional banks. So
Yeah,
these are more like online banks that are offering a little bit more,
a bit more. Yeah, I think it's
where they
always
don't
the
have the overhead like a brick and mortar.
yeah.
But yeah, there are lots of, in the United States, a lot of great products, and I don't know how they transfer or how, I do, that kind of from country. I've never really actually looked at it, but I'm now curious. So I'm going to look and like on a Marcus account, if someone lives in Scotland, can they actually own it? I actually don't know the answer to that. I think they maybe can because
Don't
it's an
know.
online bank, but I don't know.
I guess it's a trust issue because some banks haven't existed, and you've been able to have almost like a personal relationship, like going into branch. Whereas if you don't know, there's some crazy names of banks. You like, did somebody just wake up and make up that name for some
Yeah,
like supermarket bank, like a
exactly.
supermarket with a bank? Can you trust that? What if they go like insolvent tomorrow? So you think there's kind of more trust, as you say, Goldman Sachs, maybe the other names have kind of, maybe you feel like there's more size
Absolutely.
behind them. So you're not sure. Some of the banks you'd have to do a bit of research and go, how,
Mhm.
what's their kind of assets? What does it look like? What's their balance sheet? If
Yeah,
there's a
and it's interesting. A lot of these online ones have very high crypto exposure, which we're now seeing is kind of coming apart. I actually don't hate crypto. I actually think there's a space for it, but that's for another good
no, no,
discussion.
that's a really good, yeah, yeah. We could talk about that
But
as well.
if you're leveraged on crypto and people are pulling their money out, that's a concern. But yeah, a lot of these online ones, especially overseas, do have crypto exposure because they have customers that wanted to own crypto, so they had to buy crypto. They have to be able to service it. So yeah, that's something you should also look into, see which, if your bank actually has crypto, and a lot of them actually do.
Oh gosh. Um, so in terms of educating yourself, because we talked about things and getting to know the people on Twitter, etc. Um, how would you sort of recommend that people, and how did you sort of educate yourself, and how would you say?
Yeah, it's a learning. It's actually a learning experience. I've made the newbie mistake on Twitter where you go and you go, who has all the most followers? Who has like all this stuff? So I'm like following all these people, and then you quickly are realizing, no, like they know how to market themselves. So it's about finding someone that's and there's nothing wrong with marketing yourself. I actually kind of probably market myself, but it's about knowing who knows what they're talking about and not just like pumping a play, or you want to find someone that's educating. So for me, it was like a literal learning experience of seeing who actually, following their feed, following their plays, see if they actually know what they're talking about. And then there's just tons of like education, like YouTube videos like yours, and there's just really smart people on YouTube that you're just like, I'm just, wow, that's incredible. But for me, it's just, I wish I could say it's like this magic thing that you need to follow, but it's literal. Like, don't feel bad if you are watching someone's plays and they don't play out. Unfollow them. Don't take their plays. I mean, no one's going to get it right, but if they are consistently wrong or trying to get you to join their Discord or buy their services, whatever it may be, it's kind of always, are they I guess I would just ask myself, are they marketing themselves? Are they marketing their product? Or do they really know what they're doing? I think, obviously you've had a couple, like my friend Kim, who's really smart at it. Tasty Works they're more actually, Tasty Trade, Tasty Works. They're more YouTube based, but they do have some good, Twitter handles, people that I follow on that. And, just even listen to someone on a Twitter Spaces. Like if you hear, like anyone can type anything and like plagiarize something they find off the internet. Yeah. But if you can actually hear them in a YouTube or a Twitter space where they're actually talking and they don't sound like they're like giving you what you want to hear, and that they actually sound like they're intelligent, follow them. That's another tip I'd be is actually hear them talk or see them talk or give direction versus just typing it up on Twitter.
Definitely, yeah. Thanks for that. Any sort of names you mentioned? Tasty Works, Tasty Trade, Kim.
Yeah, and there's Victor Jones. That's part of them. That's super intelligent. My friend Rahul, he's really smart. He works in finance and the sector. Now you're making me blank. It's like when you put me on the spot.
Yeah, I know.
It's yeah.
I'll put them in the show notes, so if you think of anything afterwards, I can put them in.
Okay. Yeah. Like now you anyone I follow is actually probably pretty good. If you go look for me on Twitter, like anyone I follow, that's who I really look up to. And I just think there's a lot of good people on Twitter, and who are there to actually help you, not just market themselves.
No, right. It's tricky. It's going back to what you were saying as well, like how people market themselves, because there's a lot of money into how people look. So it's okay, to spend a bit of time, if you get a video up, to just make sure that it looks okay, that you portray yourself as you like to. But then there's a lot of, like if you take somebody, I'm just going to mention a name that I was looking at recently, Penny Lane, and other people who are very honest. They just say, they put up a video that I think is informative. They're not trying to sell you anything. They're not sort of got expensive, backdrops like palm trees or anything. I would like to see somebody with a really amazing sort of architect design house who's literally not selling anything, because it's always the case. But then it was the whole SBF, how the sort of down-dressed kind of millionaire or billionaire. So that
was a little too much. That was a little too slobby. Like there has to be a happy medium.
Yeah. So
yeah, I mean, I'm big into making sure you sound professional and that your videos are professional and look professional, but it doesn't have to be ridiculous, over the top, that kind of a thing. But for me, it's just like, if this person's willing to be honest, like you were saying, sometimes you just need that brutally honest person to tell you those certain things. But I do think with like, Sam Bankman-Fried, oh my goodness, that was always one of my red flags for him. That was like, if he's not willing to meet Tony Blair and President Clinton not wearing sneakers, there's something wrong. Like you just have to have some sort of, and I know a lot of people make the argument of that's just the younger generation, that's the tech industry, but I think there's still a time and place where you should be professional.
Mm-hmm. And he's being professional as well. Like if a lot of men went and sort of had sort of open-chested shirts discussing finance, that could happen, but it doesn't happen. But we get a lot of women doing that. sort of bikini shots, and then sort of discussing kind of finance. And that's a difficult conversation to have, because on the
Yeah.
one side you're sort of criticizing a personal choice.
Yeah. You
Then
don't
you're
want
trying to encourage people not to skew, as you were saying before, so that people don't get fixated on, oh, women on finance websites are sort of, just trying to get clicks by doing this.
Yeah.
So it's a and when you meet somebody who's very intelligent and they're doing that, you do wonder why, and that sort of skews things. But men don't do it, so you can't have a reverse situation where you
Yeah.
can compare.
Although this year I have seen a few men post the gym selfies that were on Twitter, and I was like, okay, this is really weird. Like, you're doing this. So I think, yeah, you never want to criticize anyone. And I think everyone has their own angles, but you want to also not have it give a off impression to everyone or everyone in the sector. So I would agree. I would hate to criticize anyone. But yeah, you have to ask, why are they doing it? I always, for me, when I was seeing like the guys post the gym selfies, I was like, with shirts, I was like, why? What does this do with finance? So yeah, surprisingly, I think when people are, this is, I think, one of the dangers of social media in a way, is it's an attention thing. So how are you striving to get your attention? Are you striving to get your attention in a way that's going to build up and make you feel like your ego, or are you trying to help someone? That would just be like my only thing when you're looking at an account, is what is the end goal here? If they have worked really hard and they want to show off their body, great, that's awesome. If that's something that's going to help bring up their ego and help them feel good about themselves, and therefore they are more confident in their trading and confident in other aspects, then that's great. If it's because they are feeling really down, or their engagement is really down and they just need something to pop it, then that's probably the wrong angle to go.
Yeah, yeah, interesting. The interview I did before this, Adrian, so he's got interest in like basically, sort of building up, like strength and
Yeah.
conditioning. So he's got videos about that. But it's very clear that that's his interest. So it's you can
Yeah,
kind of, yeah, it makes sense, right? It doesn't
absolutely.
in any way interfere with him talking about finance, or it's just
Yeah,
two sides of him that he wants to talk about.
absolutely.
So we are nearly out of time, unfortunately.
Okay.
So just to wrap things up, question about so you mentioned the Santa rally. What do you think? I mean, okay, crystal ball aside, what do you think is going to happen between now and January, or the whole Fed thing and things?
I think we are, at least till then, we're going to see temporary numbers of inflation looking like it peaked in July kind of area, and they're going to continue to look like they're going down. Now, whether or not that stays into next year is to be seen, because I do think a lot of people are, especially the middle class, are living on credit, and eventually you have to pay those credit card bills, and or just have to pay them. So
Yeah.
as long as people have jobs, they're going to be able to pay that. Now, if the job market, which they want to bring down and not have a healthy, which is but another topic, but then they may start getting defaults on that. And I think already inflation has already hurt the lower income people. But the middle class and the wealthy have been able to weather it. But I just think a lot of the middle class have just been used to stimulus and used to a really good economy, that they haven't cut back on their spending. So what has to happen, in my opinion, is people, and this is what kind of like what the Fed is saying too in the United States, is people have to lose their jobs. I'm not a fan of ever wishing for anyone to lose their job. So I would almost rather have jobs stay up and have some of these inflation stay up, because I personally think 2% inflation is a ridiculous number to aim for. When you look at the years we've had 2% inflation, we have had in the United States quantitative easing, where we've been pumping money into the system, where right now we're pumping money out. But for me, I think December, it's going to show okay numbers. You're going to have hedge funds, kind of getting their Christmas bonuses. So they're not going to be looking to sell. You're going to finish. Most people have kind of finished up their tax selling here in the United States in November, or the tax harvesting for tax benefits. So I think going into January, it'll be interesting. And then just kind of the geopolitical around the world, what happens with Ukraine and Russia and that area. It's just the thing with some of the macro thing is it's great, but it's also lots of what ifs. So it's hard to trade a market on what ifs, but it's good to have them known in the back of your head. Like, I know about this, but it isn't going to necessarily affect it today.
Yeah. Thank you. Very wise words to finish on.
Oh, thank you.
Angie, thank you very much for your time, and all the best of things. And
no, thank you for having me. I've enjoyed my time here.
Thank you. Take care.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.